Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 8th of May. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has congratulated British Prime Minister David Cameron on his impressive re-election, saying that he looks forward to working with him toward the shared goals of peace and prosperity. In what was a resounding victory instead of the predicted tight race, Cameron's Conservative Party triumphed over the opposition Labour Party. With most constituencies counted, the Conservatives won a working majority, taking 324 of the 650 seats of Parliament, compared with Labour's 229. Cameron met with Queen Elizabeth at Buckingham Palace a short time ago to accept a swift mandate to form the next government. The decisive victory puts the Conservatives on course to govern alone for the first time since 1992 without the Liberal Democrats, who have been part of the ruling coalition since 2010. There was also a big victory for the Scottish National Party, which won all but 3 of the 59 seats in Scotland, propelling the party now past the Liberal Democrats to become the 3rd largest group in Parliament. And meanwhile, Labour leader Ed Miliband has assumed responsibility for his party's defeat and has announced his resignation as party head.
Earlier today, I rang David Cameron to congratulate him. I take absolute and total responsibility for the result and our defeat at this election. Britain needs a Labour Party that can rebuild after this defeat so we can have a government that stands up for working people again. And now it's time for someone else to take forward the leadership of this party. So I'm tendering my resignation, taking effect after this afternoon's commemoration of VE Day at the Cenotaph. I want to do so straight away, because the party needs to have an open and honest debate about the right way forward without constraint.
Turning now to the new government here in Israel, and Prime Minister Netanyahu is facing dissent within his own ranks. Many Likud members have been angling for prestigious posts, and Druze member Ayub Kara has declared that there will be surprises if the government doesn't include a minister from his community. During an interview with the Knesset channel, the 60-year-old 4-term politician insisted that he be considered for a cabinet role, going on to say that the government should not ignore the thousands of Druze troops deployed on the borders who were hurt by the proposed nation-state bill and need to officially hear that they are a part of Israel. The Likud party received the majority of Druze votes in a 2013 election, but failed to repeat that success in 2015. In deals made with the Prime Minister, his 4 coalition partners, Kulanu, Abait Yehudi, United Toward Judaism, and Shas, will head 10 ministries. The cabinet is limited to 18 ministers by law, although Netanyahu is still hoping to expand that number to 22 in one of the first Knesset votes expected next week in what would essentially be a staying order to delay the implementation of the 18-minister law for the duration of the 20th Knesset. If he succeeds in that effort, members of his Likud party would be appointed to 12 ministerial posts instead of 8. Likud sources close to the premier say that he's not taking any threats against his government seriously and that no one is going to topple the next government. Officials in Washington are expressing concern over the approval of the Jerusalem District Planning and Construction Committee to build 900 new apartment units in the Ramat Shlomo neighborhood of the capital. Plans to add 1,600 new homes on the location over the 1967 lines were announced back in 2010 during the visit then of U.S. Vice President Joe Biden that provoked a fierce American opposition and a diplomatic spat with Washington that lasted for several months.
We've consistently said that we strongly oppose steps by the Israeli authorities to advance construction in East Jerusalem. This is a disappointing development. We're concerned about it, just as a new Israeli government has been announced. Israel's leaders have asserted that they remain committed to a 2-state solution, and we need to see that commitment in the actions of the Israeli government. Moving forward with construction of housing units in East Jerusalem is damaging and inconsistent with that commitment. We continue to engage with the highest levels of the Israeli government, and we continue to make our position clear that we view this as illegitimate.
Staying in the United States, where the Senate has pushed its way into the nuclear negotiations between President Barack Obama and Iran by overwhelmingly backing legislation that permits representatives to not only review but also possibly reject any final deal with Tehran. The bipartisan bill was approved by a vote of 98-1, giving Congress input on what could be an historic accord with the U.S. and 5 other world powers that they're hoping to finalize with the hardline Islamic Republic to roll back its nuclear development in exchange for sanctions relief. The lone no vote came from freshman Senator Tom Cotton, a Republican who says that he wants the administration to submit any agreement to the Senate as a treaty, which, according to the American Constitution, would require 2/3 approval of the Senate to be implemented. A vote on the measure in the House is expected next week.
I think this is a big achievement for the United States Senate. Hopefully the House will take it up soon. I think this is a big achievement for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee to work together in the way that we have. And I know that Senator Card and I have talked about the fact that this is the base to do other things. We have other important business that needs to be taken care of.
We understand that this country is stronger when we can find a way to work together. And we did. The proper role for Congress in this process. And today, we're one step closer to getting this bill done, and I believe we're closer to being able to prevent Iran from becoming a nuclear weapon state, and we would like, and our preference is to do that through the diplomatic means, and that is a much more likely result as a result of the action the United States Senate has taken today.
Officials at the United Nations have also criticized Jerusalem's plans to build more housing units at Ramat Shlomo amid their attempts to restart peace talks between Israel and the Palestinians. We seem to be having trouble bringing that to you. We'll bring it to you next. In the meantime, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said that among the greatest issues faced by his administration will be to prevent Iran from arming itself with nuclear weapons or open new fronts of terrorism or occupation throughout the Middle East, but that Israel is prepared to meet those challenges. Speaking at a ceremony in Latrun commemorating the Second World War Victory Day over the Nazis, Netanyahu pointed out that the threat that Tehran poses to others in the region creates common interests that could also give rise to opportunities and the forging of new alliances and possibly even help to promote peace. In other regional news, dozens of Hezbollah fighters have been killed in clashes with rebel forces in Syria, battling for control of the key Kalamun mountain passes on the road to Damascus. Despite criticism that the Lebanon-based Shiite group has dragged the home nation into the Syrian civil war, Hezbollah is vowing to carry on with its mission with Iran to bolster beleaguered President Bashar al-Assad. We get more in this report from IBA's R.A. O'Sullivan.
Hezbollah fighters, once a proxy of Syria, have become the main guarantor of President Bashar al-Assad's regime. Fighting has intensified in the past week in the mountainous Kalamun region, where the Hezbollah and Syrian government troops are waging fierce and bloody battles against the Islamic State and al-Qaeda-affiliated Nusra Front. Both sides are locked in the struggle here because of the Kalamun region's strategic supply route between northern and southern Syria, as well as a major passage into Lebanon. This battle could determine the fate of Assad. If they lose, Assad will lose a key ally at a time when his army, fatigued after years of fighting, is taking setbacks and desertions. Assad himself made a rare public appearance on Wednesday to mark Syria's Martyrs' Day. He told the cheering crowd that army setbacks are a normal part of war. It's hard to tell who is winning this battle because both sides are claiming victories. What is certain is that after the latest battles, there are dozens of casualties, including top commanders on both sides. The rebels say that they are wiping out Hezbollah convoys and troops. The top rebel group is the Jabal al-Nusra, backed by al-Qaeda. Unlike other rebel groups, they have made it their mission to strike at Hezbollah even inside Lebanon. And this has brought on friction against Hezbollah leader Sheikh Hassan Nasrallah from Lebanese leaders who want their country to be left out of the Syrian revolt. But despite the criticism, Hezbollah has no plans to retreat. And on another front, the Pentagon has announced it was now training Syrian rebels to fight Islamic State.
We're announcing today that combat training has begun for a company-sized group from the new Syrian forces. This program is critical and a complex part of our counter-ISIL efforts. We expect a second group to begin training in the next few weeks.
And amid all this, fresh reports have surfaced of Assad's regimes using banned chemical weapons, this time in the contested Idlib province. The reports say helicopters have dropped barrel bombs filled with chlorine, sending residents fleeing for their lives. The UN Security Council is set to discuss the matter and efforts to find a mechanism that could blame Assad and then finally take action. Ariel Sullivan for IBA News.
39-year-old Ayelet Shaked of the Habaita UD party has just been appointed justice minister after serving just 2 years in the Knesset. But former minister and Hebrew University law professor Shimon Shitrit told IBA's Steve Leibowitz that her inexperience and her lack of legal training doesn't mean that she won't be a good minister, and that the key to Shaked's success will be her ability to avoid radical change. In other news, leaders from around the world are coming to Moscow ahead of official commemoration set for tomorrow to mark 7 decades since the end of the Second World War. Many Western countries are staying away from that ceremony over Russia's role in the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Kiev's pro-Western government has been using the anniversary to highlight Russian belligerence and what it claims are its expansionist policies. Another service held in Poland yesterday was designated as an alternative to Moscow's, where European leaders joined United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who said that despite the experiences of World War II, conflict and killing of people sadly continues. He also pledged solidarity to Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, who warned against history repeating itself in his own address to those gathered.
Please. No illusion. We cannot afford to see history repeated. Annexation and invasion under the pretext of the defending ethnic minorities, temptation of turning a blind eye, the corrosion of the European solidarity. This call all become the new reality, depending on the choice of Europe. And this choice of Europe has a name, and this name of is Ukraine.
Returning now to the new Netanyahu government, and Washington will take a wait-and-see attitude. This according to Times of Israel editor David Horowitz, who told IBA's Steve Leibowitz that the Palestinians have already decided that there's no possibility of renewing the peace process at this time.
I'm not sure that the fact that Netanyahu telephoned the president and said, I've got a coalition, and that next week it'll be sworn in, I don't think that's necessarily the point at which America says, okay, we now know what government we have. The key policy maker is the prime minister, and I think they'll wait more. I think if they start to see a growth in priority for settlements, for example, if they see new projects being approved, if they make efforts to try and mediate again between Israel and the Palestinians, and they see no response on the Israeli side, I think those are the kinds of things that would prompt what President Obama himself spoke of as his evaluation of American policy on the Israeli-Palestinian process. So the fact that this is the coalition, which is certainly a right-wing Orthodox coalition, I don't think that's the moment of truth. The moment of truth will be, what does this government actually do? And when we're trying to push A, B, and C, is this government saying, no, we're not interested? There's a challenge here for Netanyahu, obviously. He's going to be torn and caught between an America, an administration that absolutely believes that there's more that Israel can do to make progress with the Palestinians, and a coalition whose hardcore, whose majority, I would even say, within the coalition, is not interested. Most of the Likud now does not support a two-state solution. Jewish Home certainly doesn't support a two-state solution. So Netanyahu, with this coalition, again, comes back to, should he have done this? Would he have done this? It's going to be much harder for him to keep the Americans less unhappy than they were in the past with this coalition.
And even before the government is sworn in, the Palestinians are already reacting to this government. Certainly there's no possibility of renewing a peace process with this particular government, and maybe no interest even on the Israeli part, at least with a majority of the coalition, perhaps. So where are the relations between Israel and the Palestinians going to go from here?
Well, the Palestinians have every interest, whenever it's possible, in painting Israel as the reluctant, recalcitrant, stubborn, impossible partner just as in the Israeli consensus, I would say, there's attitudes ranging from Abbas is impossible to Abbas is really very difficult. I mean, Tzipi Livni, who's a big supporter of trying with the Palestinians, would not say to you, oh, he's just a delight, and it's so easy to make progress with him. I don't see. I mean, in other words, even if we had the last government, right? The last government was not able to make substantive progress with the Palestinians. So, it's difficult in the best of circumstances, and now we have a coalition. Like I say, the majority within the coalition isn't interested. I don't see any encouraging horizon in that direction. I see increasing American frustration, a greater divide within Israel, because this is not a broadly representative coalition. It's certainly a coalition that reflects the result of the elections. Who was best placed to form a government? Well, that was Netanyahu. But unlike the previous coalition, the alliances he's cobbled together come from a very particular part of the spectrum. And that's going to be more divisive for Israel within, and it's going to attract greater pressure, including, if we're talking about the Americans being impatient, we have lots of concerns about the Americans don't understand things as well as some of us would like them to, but these are Israel's best allies. They're going to be, it seems to me, concerned, to put it mildly, and then there's the rest of the world, which is much less empathetic in the first place. And I think we're going to see all kinds of pressures from the Europeans and beyond. This is not a government that is going to easily be able to convince the world that Israel is the good guys in the face-off, already much misunderstood with the Palestinians.
We apologize for the many technical malfunctions that we're experiencing during this broadcast. And now we are able to bring you Steve Leibowitz's interview with Professor Shimon Shetrit about Justice Minister Ayelet Shaked.
Well, we don't have a tradition that is unbreakable of appointing ministers of justice that can only be lawyers. This tradition that existed until 1999 was broken by Ehud Barak when he appointed Yossi Beilin, who is not a lawyer, as Minister of Justice. The others were always ministers of justice, or at least educated in law, like Tommy Lapid, who was not a lawyer, but he studied law. So this is not a deviation, really, from tradition, because this tradition of expecting a lawyer to be Minister of Justice, this tradition has not been maintained.
But some of her right-wing views.
That's one. Now, the question of how long a tenure in politics, I think it's not a consideration. Obama became president after a short term as senator, and Mr. Lapid became finance minister after only political campaign with no experience before. So our politics has to accept that there are people who come and, like a meteor, are appointed. So I have no qualification about it. The real issue is to what extent Ayelet Shaked will be careful, again, not to make too sharp moves. If you want to do some fine-tuning in the relations between the two branches, or the political branches and the judicial branch, fine-tuning is fine and is absolutely legitimate. But if she will try to do or introduce revolutionary, too sharp moves, I think she will not succeed. The judicial branch is very strong. The judicial lobby is very strong. What we do not accept as legitimate in terms of, let's say, dialect or words or terminology from the political branch against the judges, we accept what judges say against the Knesset. Take, for example, what Justice Barak said about the proposed legislation. He said it's a poison. Can a minister say about a judgment that it is a poison? Oh, that would be even considered almost contempt of court. But a judge can, or former judge, can say that legislation or proposed legislation is a poison. The language of the Knesset is law, is bills. No judge can say about the language of the Knesset as poison. And so no politician can make any statement that uses this terminology against the judgments of the court. So I would say if the two sides, the political branches and the judicial branch, will behave in the sense that they will respect each other, talk in a culture, civilized language, not to use too sharp language, and very, very importantly, not to try to introduce too sharp moves and too far-reaching reforms, everything will be okay. Even it is Ayelet Shaked, and it is very difficult for some people to digest too short-term in politics, 2 years, to become Minister of Justice, which is a very important position in the government.
In financial news, the shekel today ended the trading week with a mixed performance, and due to the closure of the stock market on Fridays, here's a look at the final numbers for the week. Turning to the weather, we can expect a rise in temperatures tomorrow, as well as the chance of light rain sprinkles in the east and the southern regions. Here's a look at the forecast to home and abroad over the next 24 hours. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We'll hope you'll be back tomorrow, and I'll be here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel and abroad. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a wonderful evening and Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem.